Hi, welcome to the Recovery Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Abbasi. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor, and I am sensitive, and I wanted to talk about that today. And before I do, I wanted to call out someone who sent me a card today in the mail. And it just meant the world to me. I just got it in the mail, and it's from I don't like to say ex-mother-in-law. I like to say my first mother-in-law. And she and her husband, who has since passed away, um, always welcomed me as a daughter, even after uh, uh, their son and I divorced. And and it's just so special to me that she reached out to me and continues to show so much caring for me. Um, it just means a lot. So anyway, I wanted to mention it because I don't know if you listen to the podcast. It's possible. And if you do, I am so going to arrange to come visit. So I just wanted to mention that. And another thing that was meaningful for me today was I was in my book club, which is not the Recovery Daily Podcast book club, but I'm a part of another book club, which is from my old company. And there's a bunch of people who still work at the company and people who no longer work at the company, but we still get together and we discuss books every month. And it's another thing that I have consistently done. Now, I say consistently. I always attempt to read the book. Okay, that's my consistency. Sometimes the book sucks and I don't finish. Sometimes I forget to show up for a book club meeting. But other than that, I am consistent. My intention is consistent, and that's important. Anyway, we had a talk today about the book we read is going to be my suggestion for our book club this coming month, I think. Um, and anyway, at the end of the meeting, we were talking about if you have ever felt infinite, was the question. And I said, well, I don't really know what that means, but I can tell you that I have felt serene. So you all know that. And I talked about the first time that I ever felt serenity, um, and how I've felt that way so many times since then. Anyway, we went around and all discussed about a moment in time that we felt this like connection with the universe, or like everybody worded it differently, but we were all saying almost the same thing. It was really cool, and it was a it was a time where we all shared something that was very deep and meaningful to us with people that we wouldn't normally share something deep and meaningful to. And I mentioned that. I said that I really appreciate that the question was asked, and I really appreciate that everybody took a moment to get vulnerable because we don't do that a lot in society. So it was neat to see this other side. Sorry, I like to sit weird. um, there, it's neat to see this sensitive side of everyone. And I had already planned this topic today as I'm sensitive and I'd like to stay that way. So it was just interesting in that these two things happened right before I put the dogs to bed for bedtime and came in here to record my podcast, because these are the kinds of things that now that I'm willing to, now that I'm sober and showing up for life, I am talking so much easier about things that mean a lot to me. My sensitivity, I feel like I'm not so ashamed of it anymore. And it just feels really good because I think when I get vulnerable, I help others to feel more like they can be vulnerable around me. Now, I wasn't the first one to share when that question was asked, so it was really neat that the people that were there were so willing and trustworthy of all of us. There was just a handful of us there, but it was cool. It was really neat. So I had a good evening on my book club meeting and getting my card in the mail. It's just good. You know, there's some days that I think, pause and be appreciative of what I have, the people, the people that I have around me. So, today I want to talk a little more about sensitivity, specifically about how sensitivity has always been portrayed to me as, I don't know if that's the right word, as a weakness. I felt like my sensitivity throughout my life was a weakness, that I cried too much and I was too sensitive. I wrote all these poems like for a long period of time in my life. I would sit down and write poems, and I've talked to you about that, how unique I felt. That's what I was talking about in the book club today. I was talking about how I just felt like I was the most sensitive person in the world. Like nobody could possibly understand the intense love that my heart was capable of feeling. um, and it's just not true. It's just that nobody talked about it. That's all. So I felt like it was a weakness my whole life. And when I was drinking, it felt like a weakness also, because I just could not manage my emotions around that sensitivity. So I'm going to talk about that. But sensitivity is actually, guess what? It's a gift. It's a gift of my recovery. And it's been a gift throughout my life. But here's the but. I didn't know what to do with those emotions that were almost and sometimes were erupting out of me as a result of my sensitivity. I just did not have any control over any of that. What was going on inside of me, it just felt like a wild horse, that couldn't be tamed. It was just like, I felt ill, like I was mentally ill. That's what it felt like. Drinking subsided my feelings, my feels, as the kids say these days. I think I got that slang right. Um, until I had one too many drinks or 10 too many drinks. And then that sensitivity came out more like, came gushing out of me. So how can we constructively manage emotions when we're sensitive people? Um, I feel like I am surrounded by sensitive people. And I didn't know that I was surrounded by sensitive people throughout my life, but I was. I mean, when I look back and I think about the folks that I was surrounded by, and if I still know them today, I know that they're sensitive people. And we just didn't talk about that stuff back then. So how can this trait of being sensitive benefit us and benefit others around us, when they the sensitivity for so long felt like a curse rather than a gift. Um, so this line, I'm sensitive and I'd like to stay that way, is a lyric. If you are familiar with the Jewel song called I'm Sensitive, that's where that comes from. And I really always connected to that Jewel song. I loved Jewel, her earlier days. And this was one of the songs that I was like, yeah, me too. You know, I was still drinking when I first heard this song. But for a long time, I thought that this sensitivity was something that I had to hide, or that needed to be controlled, but I didn't know how to control it. When I was drinking, that sensitivity often felt like it was darkness. It was a negative thing. It was like a hollow loneliness inside me where nobody could possibly understand me. I couldn't manage my emotions, and the results were usually disastrous. If I was not drinking when I was like in middle school, and even then, I believe that's when I started drinking, but um, it was overflowing. My emotions were always just overflowing. So alcohol became, once I discovered it, it became a way to numb those overwhelming feelings. And it also made me able to control my emotions to a point, the emotions that stemmed from that sensitivity, depending on how much alcohol I put in my body at any given time. So the key was to, because I was self-medicating, to manage that level of alcohol to just the right level where I was able to numb the negative feelings, but let that lightheartedness and that fun side, you know, the uplifting side, still be able to surface. So I wanted to flatten my emotions, but I wanted to flatten them. If this is like the midline, I wanted to flatten them up here. I wanted to flatten them on the positive side, if that makes sense. And depending on how much I drank, I could get there. I could get to that positive side of flattened emotions. But if I drank too much and it was a fine line, then all of a sudden my feelings would just be smushed down to the negative side. And I just couldn't stop crying. Constantly. Depression, crying, all of that stuff. So getting sober did not change the fact that I'm sensitive. It's still very much a part of who I am. But what has changed is how I apply this sensitivity as a gift in my life, because that's exactly what it is. It's a gift. Sensitivity encourages me to connect with other people now, to recover out loud, to be a voice for those who don't want to speak. And what I used to feel like is my sensitivity was disconnecting me from others. And it was really the willingness and the openness to talk about it where that switch flipped. And now I see that it allows that deep empathy that I feel a lot of times. And I'm working on, I had an episode about it, if you recall, about working on that empathy and turning it a little more into compassion so that I don't over empathize and get myself in an unhealthy mental state. My sensitivity also allows me to be passionate about things like recovery, like recovering with a fellowship and helping others along the way. And my sensitivity allows me to live authentically out loud, like be able to tell you all that my feelings that aren't something to be proud of sometimes. So how is sensitivity a good thing? For starters, sensitivity enhances our ability to connect with other people. And recovery connection is key. So being sensitive actually allows me, I think, to feel like more of a part of in my sobriety program. Sensitivity allows me to pick up on subtle cues and emotions of those around me and allows me to foster deeper and more meaningful relationships. This empathy is really a cornerstone in the support groups that I'm in and recovery communities in sobriety, in stroke recovery, and in my vestibular support group that I attend every week, where understanding and compassion are vital to not only my own recovery, but being able to lift somebody else when they need it. Today I was in my vestibular support group and I just didn't like the I guess the tone of a woman who was sharing about her experience with over 20 years with a vestibular disorder and how much she has really isolated herself. And I just felt terrible for her because there was so much negative self-talk that I heard when she was sharing that I I had to speak up, and I did. Not right away. I didn't force my opinion until I was actually called upon to share my opinion. And what I was sharing about was a suggestion to seek professional therapy for, from a professional that specializes in chronic illnesses or chronic pain, because this isolation that she was talking about feeling and this I can't give in a relationship what somebody who's normal can give. I can't give what somebody who doesn't get dizzy can give. And that could be expanded to probably, I know it's true because I felt it, is when somebody is in sobriety feeling like, well, I can't give to my partner what I could have given when I was still drinking. I can't have fun with them the way that I used to have fun. They're probably not going to enjoy me anymore. I totally felt that way, and it wasn't true. I still wish it sometimes. I'm not going to lie. I still wish sometimes that I was able to go out and party the way that we used to, but it doesn't seem like he feels like he's missing out on that. So that's positive for me. But the sensitivity is what allowed me to connect so well with this woman today. And I ended up sharing about the importance of seeking help, because you can have just as much fun as you did before. You can have just as strong of a relationship with another person as you could before you got sick. And um, I'm lucky, I know that. I'm lucky that I found someone that has traveled with me through all of this stuff, through getting sober, through having my stroke, through my cognitive language issues, through now this dizziness thing and this vision impairment that I have. And I found somebody who's willing to keep going with me. And I know that that's not always what others are gifted with. But anyway, I think that there are two sides to sensitivity. I think there is an outward focused sensitivity, an outward sensitivity, and an inward focused sensitivity. Like, we can be sensitive to how we are treated. Like, we can be sensitive to what people say to us. I I think what I mean is, like, we can be offended easily. I'm really sensitive. Are you sensitive? Do you get offended really easily? Like, those seem to be set in parallel with each other. And then there's this outward sensitivity, which is how we treat other people. That's kind of like my step 10 before I go to bed, where I review, where was I, was I kind? Did I treat everybody with loving kindness? Or did I maybe say something that could have been construed another way? That is what I think of as that outward sensitivity. And there's a balance. There's a balance that I think is so difficult to achieve. But what's fun is we get to work at it our whole lives. And I try to find a place where my emotions can live, where somebody can say something to me and I am able to respond internally with, um, everybody is sick in some way. That's my response. If I'm on the verge of being offended or feeling like I'm taking something personally, I'm being maybe too sensitive, my response, and I think I mentioned this yesterday, is to repeat to myself, everybody's sick in some way, meaning, like, it's not, they didn't mean to, they weren't intentionally trying to hurt me. That everybody is allowed to make mistakes and is allowed to say things that maybe weren't very kind. And I don't have to stick it in my pocket and carry it with me. I can throw it out, at the next trash can that I pass. Like, I don't need to carry it with me. And then that balance of how we treat others as well, making sure that we're kind and loving to others, but also not being a doormat either. And all of this is such a, uh, I don't know what the word is. I keep thinking of sensitive, but there's just a balance there that is tricky. Yeah. So I think that, so moving on over to, my sensitivity has translated very much right now in recovery into passion. I care very deeply about my recovery and the recovery of others. And this passion drives me to share my story and to be open about my struggles and my pain and my victories and my progress, to support others on their journey. It's why I have the energy to show up here every day and talk for like a half an hour, 20 minutes to a half an hour. I talk every day. Like, how in the hell do I have something to say every day? Because I'm passionate about it. Because without being saved by my sobriety program, I would not be here. I would be dead. I know that for sure. I would be dead. So I'm alive and I was saved and it was freely given to me. And I'm so passionate about freely giving it away to other people. So by recovering out loud, I like to create a space where others feel safe to let their vulnerabilities come to the surface and share their experiences too. And this openness can be incredibly healing for me and for those who are listening to this podcast. And I've had so many more people reaching out to me, like trusting me and sharing with me things that they're going through. And it is just, it means the world to me. It's exactly what I wanted to happen. I wanted to be able to have a community of people that are willing to just trust each other. And I figured the only way to do that is to start trusting first and be the first person to be open and trusting and just share. And so that's what I do. Now, I am fully aware that I have to be careful about allowing myself to be sensitive in this environment, right? In this online environment. And I need to be careful about being sensitive to reactions that I get from things like this episode. Talking about my recovery, talking about my sensitivity, recovering out loud. How do I handle, for example, someone clicking dislike on an episode? Like, first of all, it boggles my mind. It really does. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm a wonderful, like, everybody's got to like me. I just think it's so interesting how a person can share something that is deeply and truly moving to themselves, and somebody else can listen to it and be like, this shit sucks, and like click dislike. But that's what happens. And I have to say to myself, everyone is sick in some way. That's what I have to say. And this line has helped me so often before the podcast, before all of this, just in sobriety, before I had my stroke, to let go of emotions that are a result of somebody pushing my sensitivity button. And the first couple times that I saw a dislike, and it was really from let's see. I think the first video that I got a dislike was this one that I actually boosted on YouTube for a short period of time, and I actually got some dislikes. And I was like, how does somebody dislike this? And I was just flabbergasted. And but I think it took me like a few days to be thinking, of course people are going to dislike this. They're not in my head. They're disliking it from their perspective and where they are. And if they're in the mood for entertainment, they're not going to want to listen to this. And they dislike it. This is not what I want to hear right now, and it's fine. It's fine. Everybody can dislike the heck out of it. But what's important is that it's keeping me mentally well, and it's keeping those who are listening mentally well. People who are liking it, because there's a lot more people who are liking it than disliking it. And that's important, for me to not forget or not ignore that that there are people who like it. And as a matter of fact, my niece came and went to the pool with me on Sunday, and we were talking about being okay with somebody not liking us. And I thought it was such a good conversation because, let's see, she is, I guess, half my age. I guess she's over, I was gonna say exactly half my age, but she's over that. So it's it's interesting how when I talk to somebody who's, say, 20 years younger than me, let's say, she's more than that, but let's say 20 years younger than me, and they are realizing this challenge of accepting when somebody doesn't like you. And when she shared about it with me, and I know you're listening, hi, Em. When she shared about it with me, it was awesome. It was awesome because we're human in the same way. And to have her say the same thing out loud that I feel is 20, and saying it at a time when she's 20 years younger than me makes me see that she's got 20 years ahead of her where she's already started thinking about learning how to accept it, learning how to accept when people don't like us. And that's pretty darn cool because some people never figure that out. Some people never learn how to accept when somebody doesn't like us. And I'm still having a hard time with it when somebody doesn't like me. It never feels good when somebody doesn't like you. But I told her, I said, I just tell myself when somebody doesn't like me, there's something wrong with them. And she started laughing, and I was like, really, realistically, if I am kind and loving to somebody and they still don't like me, there is something wrong with them. It's not, and I don't mean that in a funny way. I mean that there's something not okay at the moment, right? And I talked about, I think it was yesterday, that it's okay not to be okay. And right now, they're not okay. And it's okay. Like, I talked about how yesterday it's okay when we don't feel okay. Well, it's also okay when other people aren't okay. I don't have to carry that. I don't have to own that. A very popular line in sobriety is, um, it's not my business what other people think of me. And I would follow that up by saying that it's okay when other people aren't okay, right? So let's talk about how a sensitive person can use this trait in a constructive and value-adding way in their lives. So channel your sensitivity into creative expressions. There it is again. Whether it's writing, painting, music, or some other form of art, creative expression is a powerful outlet for sensitive people. It allows you to process your emotions and share your inner world on the outside, you know, share it with others. When I wrote poetry for many years in my life, I did not share it with anybody, but it still allowed me to get creative with that with those emotions and that sensitivity that I was feeling. So, and I do find personally that sensitive people are very, very creative, typically. I think that we see the world differently. And I think that that's uh, a positive character trait. Um, Next, engage in meaningful conversations. So use your sensitivity to have deep, meaningful conversations like I did in my book club today. Listen actively and empathetically, and don't be afraid to chime in and share your own feelings and experiences. That is where true connection and friendships are born. Volunteering and helping others. Your sensitivity can make you be a perfect candidate as a volunteer. And you can use your sensitivity to demonstrate compassion towards others. So, volunteering in your community or helping others in need can be incredibly fulfilling and a great way to use that sensitivity constructively. I decided one day, I was still drinking. That's like a phase of my life, right? Rachel 1.0. I decided I wanted to help people in need. So I started a food drive. It was just me. I started a food drive in my neighborhood when I lived in Charlestown. And I went around and I think I put out flyers and said everybody could drop their food off in my driveway. Like, I got so much food. It was incredible. Downside, lots of people donate food that is expired. Don't do that. Don't contribute food that is expired. Anyway, I got a ton of food and then I needed help actually packaging it all up and bringing it to the local food bank. It was awesome. And that's the kind of thing that it was so rewarding for me. And that's the kind of thing that we can do. People who are sensitive, you don't have to stuff it down, like use it to demonstrate how much you care about others and volunteer. You can do it. You don't have to join somebody else's um, demonstration. You can do it yourself. It was so easy. I just made a decision. I put up a sign and I was off and running. And I had an incredible response in my neighborhood. So that's one way you can do it too. Also, practicing self-care. Turn your sensitivity inward. Sometimes that sensitivity, because we feel so many emotions, it can be exhausting. It can lead to feelings of being overwhelmed. So it's important to take care of yourself. And this might be mindfulness. It might be taking a walk out in nature. It might be just sitting and relaxing and recharging. Spending time alone, like I talked about yesterday. You know what I did today? This was kind of cool. My dogs have these outdoor cots. They're kind of like a chair, like one of those chairs that you would take on a picnic and you just unfold it and you can sit in. It's like canvas. It's like that, only they're cots. So you unfold it like a chair and it lays down like a cot. It's super nifty. And I have two of them, one for each dog. And I put them out on the back deck with the baby pool, and we went out there this afternoon. It was cloudy out, but it was like 80 degrees. So we went out and sat in the shade, and I laid on one of those cots. I laid on half of it, and my Weimaraner laid on the other half, and I had my head resting on like a chair behind me. I laid there for like a half an hour and just looked at the sky. It was beautiful. It was so relaxing. Um, as a matter of fact, that really relates to that conversation I had in my book club also, because that happened right before my book club. Everything has aligned today. It's really funny. So practicing self-care, and sometimes that means just sitting back and, like, again, celebrating being alive. Advocate for causes you believe in. So use your passion and sensitivity to advocate for causes that matter to you, whether it's mental health awareness, recovery advocacy, or any other cause, the food drive like I did. So using your voice to make a difference. Sensitivity, when we harness it for good, can allow us, I think, to make real changes in the world, because sensitivity can be translated into passion, and we can connect deeply, living authentically, living passionately, knowing, like, looking inward, knowing that that is not a weakness, but it's one of our greatest strengths. It's evidence. Sensitivity is evidence of being human. What drives me to listen to other people, really listen, actively listen, and help others. It's what keeps me really anchored, really attached to my sobriety program and the steps. I realized today, as I was thinking through all of this, that I find the steps of my sobriety program to be very supportive for channeling sensitivity. So think about that, those of you who are in the sobriety program, how each step really allows for you to turn your attention towards that sensitivity that you have felt your whole life. Because I find that a lot of alcoholics have that extreme sensitivity. It's different. It kind of looks a little different for each person, but it does seem to be, there's a lot of feeling happening. So, to all my sensitive listeners out there, you must be sensitive, or you wouldn't have the patience to listen to these topics that I talk about. Embrace your sensitivity and see it as a gift, the gift that it truly is. Use it to connect, to create, to help others, and to advocate. By doing so, you can enrich your own life. You can increase your sense of purpose and add value to the lives of those around you. Thank you for tuning in today to the Recovery Daily podcast. If you think this episode could help others, please pass it along, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for listening, and I will talk to you tomorrow.